Hello everyone, good day. This is ROWENA. Today I will be discussing about how learning is facilitated. There are three elements at work in the classroom, namely the approach, methods, technique, or strategy. Let us define first the terms. Approach: a set of belief systems or philosophy dealing with the nature of education or of language, learning, and teaching. Second, methods: an overall plan for systematic presentation of the concept based upon a selected approach. And then lastly, the technique or strategy: the specific activities manifested in the classroom that are consistent with a method and therefore in harmony with an approach. So, in order for the methods and approach to be visible inside the classroom, a teacher should use a technique or strategy. Like for an instance, the whole language approach supported by the deductive method. And the technique used by the teacher is reading the whole story first or singing of a song about the story. So the concept is presenting the lesson from general ideas down or from breaking it down to its simple ideas. Now that we're done learning the three elements at work in the classroom, let us now move on to the leading approach widely practiced by the teachers here in the Philippines, which is the constructivism. Constructivism is basically a theory based on observation and scientific study about how people learn. Therefore, it is a constructed learning through real-world experiences. Each student creates his or her own schemas or mental models to make sense of the world and accommodates the new knowledge by adjusting them. This is anchored on Jean Piaget's cognitive theory, the term assimilation and accommodation. Also, constructivism is anchored on the schema theory, which describes a systematic pattern of thought or behavior that organizes categories of information and the relationships among them. Let us now compare traditional teaching and constructivism. Traditional teaching is an instructor-centered model where there is a one-way transfer of information. This encourages memorization, limited participation that can lose attention and brings boredom to students. Also, there is no room for students thinking and understanding. While constructivism, on the other hand, is a student-centered model which allows students active participation that encourages them to integrate their new knowledge to their prior knowledge and will certainly develop students' critical thinking skills. Meanwhile, it will bring some benefits to the part of the instructor. The instructor will be able to see many aspects of the students' personalities in communicating, in arguing, and in their skills of problem solving. Also, it brings positive outcomes to the part of the learners, for they will be able to interpret things they see and experience by comparing similarities and differences to ideas they already have when they go out into the world. No wonder constructivism is widely practiced nowadays because of its better outcomes. Now let's move forward to the approaches anchored on constructivism. The whole language approach, the multiple intelligences, the differentiated instruction, the schema theory, the cooperative learning, the English for specific purposes, the reflective teaching and learning, the discover learning, the modular approach, the experiential learning, the concept learning, the inquiry-based learning, and lastly is the process approach. Now let us discuss first the whole language approach. The whole language approach is an approach to learning that sees language as a whole entity, and writing, speaking, reading, and listening should be integrated when learned. For instance, in teaching children to read, you should teach them by reading the whole pieces of language to understand the meaning holistically, not just by breaking them down to letters and combinations of letters and decoded. Second, the multiple intelligences. This is the theory advocated by Howard Gardner, which posits that humans are endowed with various intelligences. Therefore, teachers' methodologies and techniques should cater to various intelligences of the students. Third, the differentiated instruction. This consists of efforts of teachers to respond to variance among learners in the classroom. Teachers can differentiate at least 4 classroom elements: the content, the process, the products, and the learning environment based on student readiness, interest, or learning profile. Fourth, the schema theory. Schema theory states that all knowledge is organized into units. Schema is described as a mental structure of preconceived ideas, a framework representing some aspects of the world, or a system organizing and perceiving new information which is used by an individual to organize new knowledge and provide framework for future understanding. Fifth, cooperative learning is a teaching method where students of mixed levels of ability are arranged into groups and rewarded according to the group's success rather than the success of an individual member. The elements of cooperative learning are face-to-face interaction, where students discuss and explain assigned tasks with each other. Positive interdependence, where the students have the sense that they're in this together and each student is dependent upon the effort of other group members. Next, individual accountability, where student is accountable for their own contribution to the group. Another, group processing, where students are given a means for analyzing their group for how well the group has learned and whether or not collaborative skills are being used. And lastly, collaborative skills, where students learn not only the subject matter but interpersonal skills and how to work in teams. So those are the elements of cooperative learning: face-to-face interaction, positive interdependence, individual accountability, group processing, and collaborative skills. Now let's move forward to the sixth approach, the English for specific purposes. This approach focuses on developing communicative competence in a specific discipline where the fundamental knowledge of the structure of general English has to be achieved first before a deeper and wider exposure to the specialized lexicon of a particular discipline is to be done for a more thorough comprehension and more efficient handling of the type of text taken to that discipline. 7. The reflective teaching and learning. This means that both the teacher and students look closely at what they do in the classroom. Therefore, it is a self-assessment process for both teachers and learners with good guide questions like, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? How effective is it? How are the students responding? How am I responding? How can you do it better? Now, the 8th approaches, the discover learning. This is an active process of inquiry-based instruction that encourages learners to build a prior knowledge through experience and to search for new information and relationships based on their interest. It is introduced by a psychologist and a cognitive learning theorist, Jerome Bruner. Now, the 9th approach, the modular. The modular approach is an approach to the design of equipment systems, programs, and the like, in which independently prepared and self-contained units or modules are combined to form the final product. This is an emerging trend in education thinking shifts traditional method of instruction to an outcome-based learning paradigm. Now, the 10th approach, the experiential. Experiential approach, it involves learning from experience. This theory was proposed by psychologist David Cole, who was influenced by the work of Dewey, Lewin, and Piaget. According to Cole, this type of learning can be defined as the process whereby knowledge is created through the transformation of experience. Now, the 11th approach, the concept learning, is a strategy which requires a learner to compare and contrast groups or categories that contain concept-relevant features with groups or categories that do not contain concept-relevant features. Thus, it focuses on the aspect of category formation and the use of concepts to interpret experiences and solve problems. Now, inquiry-based learning. Inquiry-based learning, it is a form of active learning that starts by posing questions, problems, or scenarios, rather than simply presenting established facts or portraying a smooth path of knowledge. The process is often assisted by a facilitator. Inquiry-based learning includes problem-based learning and is generally used in small-scale investigations in projects, as well as research. The inquiry-based instruction is principally very closely related to the development and practice of thinking skills. Now, the last approach, process approach. This is the application of a system of processes within an organization, together with the identification and interaction of these processes and their management. It is a method of thinking, applying to understand and plan the sequence and interactions of process in the system. Those anchored approaches on constructivism also have some techniques anchored in it, like for instance, journal writing and role-playing. So let's define these two examples. Journal writing. It is a process of recording personal insights, reflections, and questions on assigned or personal topics. Like keeping a journal or diary is a great way to chronicle events in your life. Role-playing. It is a learning structure that allows students to immediately apply content in a relevant, real-world context, which brings great advantage to the students. So these are some examples of techniques anchored on those approaches being mentioned, those 13 approaches. Finally, we are now in the last part of my presentation, the popularly used methods by the teachers. First, the lecture method. It is an oral presentation of information by the instructor. Second, the discussion method, which involves a two-way communication by the participants, the teacher and the learners. Another, demonstration lesson, brainstorming, role-playing, collaborative learning, and group reporting. So, indeed, learning is a process in which educators or teachers use approaches, methods, technique, and strategy in order for the learners to have a meaningful and successful learning. I hope you learned something from my discussion today, and to wrap it up, I will be leaving you a word to ponder by Marvin Minsky, in which he states that you don't understand anything until you learn it more than one way. Till next time, thank you for watching and have a great day. Once again, this is ROWENA TORREON signing off. Bye-bye!